Mr. Lochan, tell us on whose side history stands when it comes to the controversy surrounding Nehru and his role in Kashmir's accession to India.
See, history doesn't take sides. History merely informs, and then it is for people of the times, of contemporary times, to take sides, depending on what they understand with history. I would say that it's very important for us to understand that there was a time when India was led by political leaders who were, mentally not very strong. They would succumb to pressure rather easily, and they were quite eager to please whomsoever they thought would be pleased with whatever they were saying. The interests of India were central to their thinking, yes, but their actions and their policy decisions did not seem to reflect that all the time. That's what I would say for the moment.
Do you believe Nehru is to be blamed for the problems in contemporary Kashmir?
Oh, of course.
Let me ask you a straight question.
Oh, of course, considerably. Nehru is to be blamed for the problems in contemporary Kashmir, and Nehru not just because of the decisions that Nehru took, but also of the large number of inactions that Nehru had. A large amount of ignorance that we have about what is Kashmir and how is Kashmir to be connected with India emerges simply because the government of India in the first few decades of independence made absolutely no effort to physically reach out to that territory. ठीक है, they sent their military inside, they they allowed the people of Kashmir to come into India, they made all sorts of noises about how Kashmir is with India, but their focus was not on developing Kashmir and integrating it with India. Even the Kashmiri bureaucrats whom these people hired and kept around them, they showed very little interest in ensuring that people remain with India all the time and feel connected on have a thick bond, have a strong bond with India. That was a very serious error that Nehru's actions and inactions brought to us.
So you're saying that Nehru had choices, but he chose not to act.
Nehru had choices where he acted wrongly, and a large number of other areas Nehru was simply completely unaware of what he's supposed to do and how. Think about this simple thing about sovereignty. Should sovereignty be determined by a vote? This is good for small countries of North Europe, but it's absolutely a bogus point where countries as big as India are concerned, where populations of a humongous size are to be dealt with. And yet, Nehru, for all his sensibilities about how Western democracies function, Nehru ended up in this trap of saying that sovereignty has to be determined through some kind of a vote. Acha, chalo, let's presume that was an error was an excusable error. Then we come to the 1947, 1948, 1949 period. This is the time when Sheikh Abdullah visits Karachi, and he suggests that let's have a vote, let's have some kind of understanding that Kashmir has to join India. And the leadership of Pakistan says, no, this can't be allowed because these people will inevitably vote for India, they will inevitably join India. And Nehru, if the newspaper journalists knew about it, if they were reporting it in the Times of India, I'm absolutely flabbergasted that the government of India and its leadership, Nehru being the foreign minister of those times, who were determined to take on the case of Kashmir, they remained unaware of this or chose not to take any action. Remember, I said inactions are just as bad as taking wrong actions.
Mr. Lochan, there were other princely states, such as Hyderabad, Bhopal and Junagadh, which faced a similar choice as Kashmir did. Now, if the decision were left to the head of the princely states, then India risks losing these states. How do you see this argument?
Oh, well, the Nizam of Hyderabad wanted to join India. It was his prime minister who did not. And it was the Prime Minister who started, who also happened to be a leader of what today is called the AMIM, who started a communal riot in Hyderabad, the entire Hyderabad territory, which means places as far off as Osmanabad and Hingoli in Maharashtra, Nanded, in which attacks happened on Hindus. They created a situation of great turmoil, and it was in this situation of great turmoil that the Indian army moved in to control that riot any further. So the Nizam wanted to join in. The fellow at Junagadh did not want to join. But then sovereignty at some point is also asserted. Nehru never wanted to assert sovereignty. The only time when he really made an effort to show some sense of asserting sovereignty was when he tried to send his completely ill-prepared army into the far reaches of the Himalayas. And that, very unfortunately for us, was one of the first major defeats of the Indian Army. The Indian Army, which had been undefeated for many decades, all of a sudden lost war against an enemy that had been bested in the past by various other armies. And please remember, when Pakistan invaded India in 1947, in October 1947, Pakistan invaded India, Nehru sat down and Nehru quibbled about whether this was a military attack, whether this was a civilian attack, whether this was a militia attack. I mean, I'm absolutely amazed that a political leadership should resort to such kind of nonsensical hair splitting when what they really need to do is to throw the Pakistani invaders out. It was a proper Pakistani invasion. And then, as the Indian military started getting an upper hand and as they started pushing the Pakistanis back, what does the Nehru government do? The Nehru government tells the military, cease, desist, don't move forward. I can only wonder why these decisions were being taken.
Mr. Rijiju claims Maharaja Hari Singh wanted Kashmir to accede to India in July 1947, a month before India's actual independence.
Yeah.
What's your view on it?
Oh, of course, he wanted to accede to India. I mean, I can't have a view simply because the Maharaja is on record in various places saying that Kashmir should join hands with India. Remember, that is a time of transformation. That is a time when the British have played this extremely underhand game of handing over sovereignty to their subordinate, their subcontractors, people who had been working as subcontractors for the British, who were under the sovereign control of the government of India. They were all of a sudden offered the deal ki you can become independent. Under such circumstances, states like Alwar, Bharatpur, Jaipur, even they wanted to become independent. Travancore wanted to become independent. It was the Prime Minister of the Travancore Raja who counseled him ki itna pagalpan mat karo, please join India. Hari Singh seems to have played around with both thoughts. He needs time to think, but also it would be much preferable for him to join hands with India. These are matters of record. These are not matters of my thinking or your thinking or anyone else's thinking.
But there are experts who argue that Maharaja did not exactly quote-unquote offer to accede.
Oh, well, you know, Indian
47, but started a communication.
The experts on India are amazing people. They don't read documents. They don't understand documents. They try to give virtually every piece of information a flip, which is entire India. I would not go by such experts at all. And it's extremely unfortunate that many people within the government of India, civil servants in the government of India, are of this variety. Please let me remind you, it was recently as about 6 years ago, when an American associate professor called Christine Fair, she wrote a note wondering why the government of India never seemed to believe, never seemed to take notice of the fact that the Security Council resolution says very clearly that Pakistan needs to first vacate its occupation of Kashmir. Not only that, the net result is that if you allow such a obnoxious situation to continue for long enough, you very soon reach a point where people start presuming that that is the normal. I've come across very important newspapers of India where articles are written, proper articles on the op-ed page, news items are carried, long news items by the correspondents, which talk about something called Indian occupied Kashmir. I mean, you got to have your head twisted in some different way in order to presume that these are legitimate ways of speaking in India about Indian territories, about Indian people.
allegation against Nehru that he undermined India's claim on Kashmir by taking the issue to the UN. Do you agree with the argument that you did mention a bit about it, earlier, but I'd like you to shed some more light on it.
See, I would rather not get into a blame game kind of a thing. When Mr. Kiran Rijiju says what he says about Nehru, Mr. Rijiju is a politician who's dealing with contemporary times and moving into the future. I, as a student of history, or anyone else who studies history, does not do their work on the presumption that they will throw mud at the people of the past. The people of the past, they were doing things which they thought were right. Today we know through hindsight that Nehru's decisions were considerably incorrect and they created an additional problem for us, and subsequently Nehru and his government and also subsequent governments made absolutely no effort to rectify the problem. They only helped to make the problem worse. Well, those people were taking those decisions within the context in which they lived. Today the context in which I am living is very different. So I can notice that their decisions were incorrect. I can notice that those decisions were extremely flawed, and people like you and I have to pay a heavy cost for those wrong decisions. But at the same time, I would not attribute any malice to them. I mean, quite a large number of things in this world happen, quite a large number of bad things in this world happen without anyone having any malice to anyone else.
Finally, Mr. Lochan, there are many who say if it wasn't for Nehru, Kashmir wouldn't be a part of India. Your thoughts on it?
That is a joke. I think Kashmir has always been part of India. Kashmir has been part of India for thousands of years. From the earliest known history, Kashmir has been a part of India. There was absolutely no time when Kashmir was not part of India or was not going to be part of India. If anything, Nehru's constant kowtowing to Muslim communalism was the one which was responsible for creating this completely new thought, which presumes that Kashmir ke liye there's a possibility it can not be part of India. I don't think there's any reason to presume this kind of a wrong thought. Kashmir was, has been, and shall remain a part of India. We don't need to give credit to Nehru for this. What we need to do is give credit to the people of Kashmir, that they have stood by India despite all this negative propaganda from Pakistan, despite all this negative Islamist pressure which has been coming in the recent past, and despite the tremendous amount of inactions on the part of the government of India for so many decades. And that government of India included Nehru's own government.
Right, I'll wrap up on that note. Thank you, Mr. Lochan, for enlightening the audience with your deep knowledge of the subject.
Thank you.